G'day everyone. Welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the podcast where two mates from all the way across the world have a yarn talking Packers football and the green and gold. I'm Nick Gregory, as always joined by my co-host Iowa Joe. Today joined by a very special guest, Lombardi Bar legend Dan Kotnik. This is one of those kind of guest screenings that's kind of been in the makings for a little while. I'm really excited to finally talk about the most important position on the roster with Dan, and going to this very tumultuous off season. There's kind of a lot of questions surrounding that. So, Dan, let me know how are you feeling today? What's your outlook on the quarterback position and the draft in general?
Sure. Well, Nick, Joe, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and I believe the impotence that led me to actually coming on for this specific episode was, I think I told Joe, I'm like, I think Joe, you asked me, like, do you want to come on, like, and do a draft episode? Like, I think you asked me, like, what I wanted to come on. I said, I don't know much about the draft. Like, I'm not like the best scout, but like, I'll come on and bash Aaron Rodgers for an hour if that's what you'd like. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So
all right. Well, that leads me I have two very important questions before you go any further for
okay.
Nick, or for Dan. One is, of course, going to be, I ask everybody who's been coming on ever since until this thing gets cleared up, your feelings on Aaron Rodgers and the situation there. My second question, and this one's very, 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 very important. Where were you on January 6th of 2021?
It was such an inside baseball reference, and I absolutely love it being placed here. I was at home working. I have an alibi. It's a very clear alibi.
Hey, as far as I know, there have never been pictures of you on that day. So
exactly, except some very poorly photoshopped ones from Todd.
I don't think so. I think I had some very good pictures of you going around out there. Poorly photoshopped my ass. Thanks a lot. You just wait till you see the next ones.
Oh, I am looking forward to it. In terms of the Aaron Rodgers situation, pull the trigger, man. Pull the trigger. Like this horse is already limping into the barn. Like let's take it out back. Old Yeller's my dog, and let's finish this. Like I have never been more excited to see one garbage team trade a garbage wide receiver to another garbage team than when the Jets traded Elijah Moore to the Browns. And I was like, it's happening. It's finally happening. They got the picks. They got the picks to make this happen. Let's do it, Goody. Let's pull this. I'm like, I'm ready. 2 second-round picks, swap first, send it off to Goodell for approval. I just want this to happen because we all know it's going to happen. Let's be adults about this, and let's move forward and just get it done. I want it to be done so that at the very least, I don't have to, like, every time I do a mock draft, I don't have to manually trade Aaron Rodgers for like some imaginary picks. At least I know what the fuck I'm going into at that point. Let's just get it done. Let's get it done.
Well, I have to give Goody and the front office credit. They're fighting tooth and nail for compensation. It's not like back when Favre and Ted Thompson and they just traded him for the conditional third or fourth round pick or whatever it was. I have to give them credit. They're digging in their heels and saying, if you want this guy, you're going to give us what we want out of it. And, I think, I don't know, Nick, if you were looking it up or not, but Schefter tweeted earlier that, or some point today, that the Packers are saying we want your first round pick, and that's the only way this thing's going to happen. And, so I have to give Goody credit for it. He's really dug in his heels, and he's saying, we'll sit him. Obviously they're hoping to get it done before draft day, but it looks like they could drag on until September when the roster bonus hits. And I got to give him credit. He's not backing down. I think I think if they were switched positions and it was Joe Douglas trading off Aaron Rodgers, he'd have buckled, weeks ago.
Yeah, and like there's that thing from there's that thing from John Kuhn today as well, and he kind of like outlined it, which whether or not that's kind of appropriate from an actual like Packers employee is kind of funny. But what he said, his thoughts were that the Packers, they originally wanted 2 first rounders. and then they kind of back down to the 1, and now they're kind of arguing over the semantics of like, is it an actual 1 or worth a 1, which is what the second rounder would probably be for in the Elijah Moore trade, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I'm with Joe. I love that as a child of divorce who experienced a not very healthy relationship with their stepfather growing up through their teenage years. I respect someone that is willing to sabotage everything in their life, literally to spite another person, if that is what is going on. Because I love that Brian Gutekunst is basically just saying like, we're 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 boned cap wise either way. Like there's no magic wand that's like, well, if you do this, it'll all go away and everything. Like, no. Like we're in a shit situation whether he sits and holds a clipboard for 17 weeks or goes and plays for you. So you can decide if you're willing to sit there in week 5 while Zach White is losing to the Patriots 9-6, that you get to explain to the New York media why you wouldn't pull the trigger and get Aaron Rodgers, who's sitting behind Jordan Love right now. So all the leverage talk of here and there, I'm like, I don't care about the leverage talk. What I care about is what you said, Joe, is like Brian Gutekunst fully understands what the situation is and has everyone like in the building on the same page. It feels like of here's the nuclear situation if it happens, and we're all ready to go down with the ship if this goes down. So, and I respect that.
Yeah, it's really great. And here's the other thing. Let's say they dig in so far that the Jets say, "Forget it, we don't want him." And the Packers already moved on to Love, and Rodgers is back. Is quote unquote the backup. He's not going to handle being the backup, so he's going to sit out. Guess what happens then? The Packers start fining him because he's not showing up to the team. So I mean, basically it's a win-win for the Packers either way. Like you said, Dan, they're in cap hell no matter what they do, whether they keep him, they trade him, whatever. Next year doesn't look good if they keep him, but whatever, it's not going to be great. But I say shoot for the moon. And let's face it, the Jets shot themselves in the foot when Woody Johnson came out and said he'd be willing to trade 2 first-round picks to upgrade his quarterback room. Well, if I'm the
Nobody likes
Packers,
to
I
bring
go in
that
there
up.
saying, all right, well, I want 3 first-round picks, and then the 2 first-round picks is just the medium. So it's going to be great. And I think, in a way, I would be very disappointed if they just ended up with the 2 second-round picks. Yeah, that would be great. But with all the digging in the hills of what Gutekunst has done so far, if they don't end up with either a first round this year or a first round next year, I think I would be a little bit disappointed in it. But as much as I would love to have it done right here, right now, where we could just say, pull out our phone and as we're recording, say, all right, well, breaking news, Aaron Rodgers is a Jet, blah, blah, blah. I would be disappointed with the 2 seconds, even 3 seconds. But if we ended up with 3 second-round picks, you know what else? How coincidental that would be, being that the year after Favre was traded, we had 3 second-round picks. We're already looking like a mirror image of the Favre situation. Just to have 3 second-round picks would put it even further.
You know what the situation reminds me of? It's that episode of South Park where Canada goes on strike and they're like, can we find a way to give them something to make it feel like they win the argument? Like everyone's trying to find, nobody wants to look bad. Let's just find, whatever it is, like we all can look good here. Just figure it out. But yeah, you're exactly right. Selfishly, I want this done immediately. As a fan using like logic and everything, I'm on board. I'm lockstep with Goody on this.
So that leaves me to the second question: Where were you, Where were you, Dan, on January 6th?
I was in my house in Detroit. I swear to God.
No mercy, jeez.
Oh man, you should see the Lombardi Lounge chat when Todd or Jimmy says something like that. Then it
The
just blows
wor-
up. But
the worst part is my wife will throw it in every once in a while. If I start like kind of like poking the bear too much, she'll call me like January 6th or something like that, and I'm like, God damn,
well, I have to
I'm
take credit
stuck.
here. I'm the one that came up with the
You
Q
did come
Dan.
up with yes, you did come up with you, Dan, which I do as much as I don't hate the memes. Like I'm not like I understand like the joke behind it and everything. I'm in on it, but I love the creativity that like it's gotten. Like it's not just like the same joke. It's the it's grown with those nicknames. I do appreciate that. I do appreciate the creativity behind it.
Well, I will be honest with you. It's all in good fun because I'm probably just as liberal as you are.
Right,
So if
right.
that chases off fans to hear that, I it doesn't bother me. But or I don't want to call them fans. They're listeners. They're listeners.
Sure.
But I am, and so with me, I don't know how the other guys are. They just do it because they're dicks. But I just do it because I'm in the same boat here, where I
I'm
think
an
it's
easy
just
target.
all in fun.
I'm an easy
Yeah.
target. I understand.
And I really have to question this, even though this isn't a video podcast. I'm used to seeing a certain Dan Kotnik,
Mm-hmm.
and right
Well,
now I'm not
I,
seeing it. So this could be like a doppelganger, and
you're
I don't
right.
even know if I'm talking to the true Dan.
No, this is yeah. I'm wearing as much as we just went all in on that. I am wearing my Aaron Rodgers dry fit jersey, and my wife even questioned it today, and I was like, "Look, the this is a really nice jersey. I love this goddamn jersey.
I don't want to.
It,
I
it,
spent so
if
much money
it's
on it. I don't want.
the thing is, I didn't even spend much money on this one. I got this one when the jersey store went out
Went
of
out of
business.
business.
I'm like, I got this for like $50. And I'm like, fuck, like it's a nice, like it's like the off color yellow, like they've never I don't think they've ever worn these as actual
No.
jerseys. And it's like it's a dry fit, it's like a nice, like really good jersey. And I'm like, fuck, like I literally thought I'm like, sorry for swearing, this isn't my podcast.
I don't care.
No,
I swear
whatever.
like Nick has to remind me once in a while because I swear like a friggin' sailor. So
I'm like, like I appreciate the irony of wearing this for this podcast, so that's why I did it. But also, I'm like, I just really enjoy listening or doing this pod or wearing this jersey. Hold on a second.
wifey showed up.
I had the baby monitor. Okay,
All
we're
right,
good.
so now that we've derailed a little bit, maybe we should jump into what we're here for.
I can dig it.
So yeah, I mean, it's with all the stuff around Aaron Rodgers and whatever, it's kind of easy to forget. I think the actual state of what the working state of what the quarterback position will look like on the team going into this year. I mean, they don't really have a good backup. I mean, they have Danny Etling, but I mean, like, not it's like that's not really a backup, right? I don't know if you guys saw, but I would have been interested in bringing back Benkert, but he mentioned on his Twitter that apparently some of the people in the front office don't actually like him. So I guess that's kind of off the table. But I mean, I think this is a year where I think Green Bay will want to draft a backup QB. Kind of depending on exactly how they view some of these guys, it will determine whether or not they'll pick up one in the later rounds. But I think one way or another, whether it's through free agency or the draft, I think the Packers will be adding a backup or some kind of light competition for Jordan Love. It's pretty difficult, to go up and trade picks to draft a really talented quarterback, one of the top four. But I think, yeah, I think that's what I see the Packers doing. I mean, how do you guys feel about this?
Well, kind of to add on there, Nick, Kurt actually got signed with an XFL team today too,
That's
the
true.
San
That's true.
Antonio Brahmas. So it looks like, and there for a while, Kurt had said he wanted to take time away from football anyway and do some of his off things. So it looks like he's getting back into the groove. And yeah, I saw that tweet too, and that was kind of interesting. But I will give you my feeling of what I tell everybody. Again, this mirrors the Favre Rodgers situation from many years ago, but I have a feeling that come draft day, the Packers will take somebody in the earliest round, not necessarily the first round. I'm not saying the first round, but maybe the second or third round that's kind of taken a tumble down, kind of like they did with Brian Brom, and have him come in and battle for that backup position. That way they have a capable backup. Well, we didn't know at the time that Brian Brom wasn't going to be a capable backup, but but to kind of have that backup to Jordan in case something happens, and that can still learn the system and maybe get them draft capital later on and down the line. So that's how I feel. I would also think they might bring in some veteran types just to have a competition during training camp and the OTAs and stuff like that. And with the new rules of the practice squad, they can always stash one of those guys on the practice squad. So I really think the Packers will go into this draft with the mind of taking one, whether, I wouldn't be surprised if it's anywhere between round 2 and round 4. I hate to say round 3 because I'm still all aboard of the round 3 curse, and I think we should trade all round 3 picks from here to eternity. But yeah, between round 2, 3, and 4, somebody who's fallen. Now, I couldn't give any names because I'm not really great at saying, oh, well, this guy's going to be a first rounder, but he just tumbled to the third round, So that's my view of it.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of in the same boat. Is like, I'm not the best draft guy, but I do what I can when I'm trying to like get into this, and reading other people's opinions and being just kind of up on how I sort of have viewed these players as I've seen them and what I've watched and stuff. It feels like there's a real precipitous drop after those like first
Wow, Dan's
3
using
or
some
4.
big old words over there.
Nice word. Nice word.
But like basically it's like everyone's saying, it's not a great quarterback class.
No.
So once those first couple are gone, which it seems like it's going to be within the first 20 picks at least, all those guys are probably going to be gone. I'd be really interested to see when another quarterback actually comes off the board. And so for me, like I don't think I think the Packers go into this knowing that they want to address the quarterback position, but I think it's a matter of if the opportunity presents itself, we're gonna take it. Not so much of we want to make sure we try to get somebody in this draft because we want to have somebody. That's how I see it, or how I would approach it even. So there's one or two guys on here where I'm like, if they fall down to 3 or 4, like it really could. And I think again, it depends on what is the haul that they get from Aaron Rodgers, because if they only end up with 2 second round picks this year, maybe that changes how they kind of go a little crazy with those second round picks, and then they feel like they've addressed a lot of positions and they'll be more willing to draft a quarterback higher. If they get less picks, are they going to, how conservative are they? So I agree with your sentiment though altogether that, I think they want to try to address it here in the draft at some point, because that's just how this team operates with draft and develop. But yeah, there's some really intriguing veteran options. And part of me also just wonders if like Brian is just sitting there waiting to see if like a Matt Ryan or something like that, or would make his way up and just kind of, I don't know, be like the father that Jordan Love never had in Aaron Rodgers. It's a lot of dad talk on this podcast.
I was going to say, be careful with that one, because Jordan actually lost his dad when he was 14. So
that bad choice of words. Hypothetically, yes.
But yeah, I was just looking at the free agent tracker right now, and really there's not a lot of great names out there at the moment. Matt Ryan is probably the one that I would bring in. I mean, you got guys like Wentz and Bridgewater and Rudolph and Flacco, and I mean, those don't really as backups, sure, I guess, but I would rather put my money on a second round draft pick than a guy like that. But Matt Ryan is the only one that I could see in there that I could understand bringing in as a mentor slash emergency quarterback if
Right.
something happens to Jordan. So yeah, I'm all in with the draft when it comes to the
Let,
quarterbacks because I don't see anything worth
let
it.
me let me ask you guys a question. What's the highest round you would go if one of your quarterback crushes falls to there? You're saying this is the highest I would go in drafting a quarterback here. Because for me, I think it's four. If anything above that, I'd be kind of like, you better really, really like him in my mind.
The highest that I would go right now is probably 45. If and one guy that I'll mention, I'll talk a little bit more on, but I'll say it right now, Will Levis. I think if Will Levis falls out of the first round, that he'll be the guy that they'll take. And like I said, I'll get into him a little bit more when we actually start getting into our what we saw, what guys that we like, and all that. But like I said, I really, with as many holes that are in the Packers team, I think quarterback would be way too much of a luxury, even though I still believe that they're going to take somebody. So if the first round would be completely out for me unless something really strange happens. We get like a bong gas mask video of Anthony Richardson and he falls all the way to like pick 32. Then you got to say, okay, well, yeah, let's trade back up and take that kid because he's got talent, even though there's some question marks with him outside of the hypothetical bong gas mask video. It, it, like I said, first round, I think they really have to address some other positions depending on how the draft board falls. And again, we're all in the question mark area because we don't know what they're getting back in return for Rodgers. So that could, if they get 13 and then another in a second round, or 13 and two second rounders or whatever it is, that would give them some ammunition to say, okay, well, we've got two picks relatively close to each other in the first round. So let's trade one of them back, get some more picks. And then, okay, we're at, pick 29, and here's Will Levis, or what's another one out of the first round that they're talking about? Let's just go with the hypothetical. Anthony Richardson, let's just say he's there at 29. Then I can say, okay, well, we've got enough draft capital later on to pick what we need. So it's a luxury. Take him. Because then, like I said, you have him sit back. He's only going to spot start if something happens with Jordan. And then 2-3 years down the line, you trade him off and you get what you can out of him. So my top right now, depending on what we get for Rodgers, is probably 45.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same boat for most of them. I think that the Packers will probably be all over like Will Levis. I think he's the kind of guy that the Packers like love. Honestly, if someone like CJ Stroud fell to 15, I think that he's probably better than any other prospect in the draft that would be available at that point. I think yeah, I think
Ohio State.
I think they're totally out on Bryce Young. I mean, if I was an NFL GM, I would not touch Bryce Young purely for the weight concerns. And then, yeah, and after that, like you kind of addressed that precipitous drop. There's not really anyone that's really worth taking seriously, probably until like round 3, depending on how they feel about it, maybe early round 2. But speaking realistically of what I think would happen with the draft, I don't want them to draft anyone before like round 4 minimum.
Yeah, like I said, my earlier statements before Dan asked that question, I really think it's going to be between rounds 2, 3, or 4 that they will pick somebody, and it's all going to depend on who's sitting there at their value. But yeah, I can see it. I can see
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Yeah. Well, if you guys are happy, let's get into these prospects then. I mean, yeah, this is admittedly a weaker quarterback class. I don't think there's a single complete prospect. Stroud is my personal favorite, but in years past, we've had such star-studded QB classes, and there's not really one guy who's like the definitive best. There's like, a bit of different flavors here and there, but it's kind of an odd one. And I think, yeah, after you kind of get past really those big two, in my opinion, it's a bit of a lottery ticket, really. I mean, who is your guys' number one favorite prospect from a ability standpoint in this draft?
Well, we all know who Dan's is, so I'm just going to jump ahead of him right now. And honestly, the guy that I like is probably not even a first round, maybe not even a second round, and that's Clayton Tune out of Houston, because I thought he meets their athletic, standards, because his RAS is at a 9.73, so he's there at their athletic type. He's not the tallest, but he's also not the shortest. I mean, I think he was like 6'1.5". So I mean, he's still a viable option. He's got speed to him. He's kind of a mix of a scramble throw quarterback. I thought his short and medium accuracy looked pretty good. He can let the ball sail on him a little bit, and he needs to work on his touch deep. He was kind of misplacing. Like I said, he was overshooting some targets, so he needs to work on that little bit of touch. But overall, I think with his athletic ability and letting him sit behind Jordan, taking him in the third round, even though, like I said, I still don't like third round picks, I would be down for it. But I can also see where they would like Will Levis, because here's something interesting on Levis. I did watch a little bit of him. He seemed pretty decent. I know there was talk. Was it Dusty Evely, or was it? I can't remember who I saw talking about it, but they said there was some really big knocks on him that people aren't paying attention to. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I did like what I did see on him, but my favorite website when it comes to the draft is Mock Draftable, and they don't do full on comparisons. Oh, well, this guy throws like this guy, whatever. They just match up compatibility with their measurables, so their draft numbers and stuff like that. And do you guys know what Will Levis's top comparable quarterback is?
Is it going to be Jordan Love? If you say
Yeah,
it's Jordan Love,
it is Jordan Love with an 83.8%. Him and Jordan Love share commonality. So I could see him. That's why I said earlier that if he fell to midway through the second round and the Packers are sitting there with 2 or 3 second round picks, I could see them taking him, because he basically matches everything that Jordan Love did. And these guys fell in love with Jordan Love. I don't see how they wouldn't be able to fall in love with Will Levis. Like I said, I can't remember who was talking about it, but I know they said that there was some things they didn't like about him, so there are going to be some knocks. But I, with what I saw, I didn't mind him. He looked like he had some solid arm strength, kind of similar to Jordan. When he could set his feet, he was accurate as accurate could be. But if he couldn't get his feet set, he was pretty wild. He had scrambling ability, but he wasn't like super fast with it. He needs to be a little bit more aware of the pressure, because he was taking some hits that he probably didn't need to be taking. I said he also needed to work on his placement, because on some of his passes he was getting a touch high. Sometimes you want that from a quarterback depending on coverage, but he was hitting some guys that were wide open, like they would have to jump to catch the ball. So you want, if they're wide open and nobody's around them, you kind of want to hit them in center mass. So that was another thing I saw with him. And then, like I said, Mock Draftables has him compared to Jordan Love by 83.8%. So if he fell, I could see that being their guy. And hopefully he doesn't end up like Brian Brom.
okay. So this one's a little tricky for me. I know I would think so. Was going to go C.J. Stroud here, but here's my thing. As an Ohio State fan, I've had at least probably close to a decade and a half of very mobile running quarterbacks. And CJ Stroud is not that. He's not a Justin Fields. He's not JT Barrett. He's not any of these guys. And it's like, it was frustrating for me sometimes to watch Ohio State football when it's like, if you could learn how to do what Jalen Hurts did in college and is doing in the NFL now, or Kyler Murray, and it's like you could be like a entirely new level of quarterback, and it frustrated me so much. And so for me, he is still, I think, the best overall prospect of a if you were starting if you had to start an NFL franchise with a quarterback in this draft. I think he's the one you would probably want, because Bryce Young, I think, is probably a better player, but like what Nick said, I don't think he has the durability to last long in this league, especially if he's going to go to a crappy NFL team like he probably will end up being. If I'm going to go off the board and say like my favorite player in this class, it's Anthony Richardson. Because I just I how I know you said I can swear, but how weird can I be on this podcast?
Well, shoot for it. If
I
I have to cut it, I'll cut it.
I am so horny for running quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson. Oh my god. Like the
That's a first.
just like watching film of Anthony Richardson doing what he does to SEC defensive players. Like that is just like that's the kind of stuff you don't teach. And so like I was literally thinking, I'm like, man, if we were in a position right now, let's say like for some weird position, we're at 15, we don't have Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers has retired or whatever, like we are in need of a starting quarterback at 15. I'm like, I as much as like you know the some of the like skill set, like the refinement of Anthony Richardson might not be there. I could really be pounding the table to pick him up at 15 if I was trying to start him this year, because I'm like, he just has the athleticism to go out and make plays. He can go out and do the thing that you want him to do, and that's make something good happen out of any sort of situation, whether it's in the play or he has to play backyard. So yeah, I think if I had to say the guy that I love the most, I think it's Anthony Richardson, because, like I said, it's like you love your wife, but it's like, man, if a girl walks by with red hair, you're the guy that has a thing for chicks with red hair. You're like, oh man, like how serious is this thing? It's like
Well, now Dan's
That's
wife has to
Anthony.
worry a little bit.
We've had the conversation about redheaded women. Anthony Richardson is that kind of guy for me, where it's like the intangibles and the thing that I see in him, I'm like, fudge, like I would really just love to have that as my quarterback, you know?
Yeah, I can see with Anthony Richards because I mean he's an exciting player. I see him kind of in the same boat as Lamar Jackson.
That's exactly what I thought.
The problem is with like Lamar, though, you worry about the arm. Not necessarily that they have the arm talent, but do they have the arm accuracy? And I don't think a player of Lamar or Anthony Richards is going to play well in like LaFleur's style, because LaFleur's style obviously is the run heavy, and even though we haven't seen it yet in the Rodgers edition of the LaFleur offense, it's more of your tight end heavy type deal. And I don't know how well that would play. I'm not saying it can't work. I don't know how it would play in that. But yeah, Anthony Richards is an exciting player, and it would be I I don't know if I would go as far as saying what Dan said about him, but
Most sane people wouldn't. So
I would be happy with him. But I think to be fair to Jordan, I think we kind of have that with him without that big speed. I think Jordan can scramble and Jordan can get moving, but I don't know if he has like the Lamar type speed for a quarterback. So I'm really interested to see how he can play out at this season. And I think that's really what this is, because obviously they haven't made a decision on his fifth year yet, which they'll have to pretty soon. I don't remember when the deadline is for that. I think it's in a couple weeks. But I think these next 2 years are basically a tryout. Okay, you're starting this year. We'll see how you do. Then next year it's do or die. You're either gonna succeed or we're gonna boot your ass to the curb and rebuild this son of a bitch. So, and I would hate to say that because I'm old enough that I just barely missed the 80s. I was there right at the tail end, but not enough to that I was watching. So my earliest is I do remember the Magic Man just a hair, and then the rest of it's been Favre. And there's only been a few times where there have been losing seasons, or they missed out on the playoffs. So I would hate to see a complete rebuild, but I think that's what they're looking to. If Jordan can lead us, we're not going to go into a full rebuild. They're going to go into a soft remake. We'll call it a remake more than a rebuild, and just start plugging and playing guys to fit the roster that also fit under their cap restraints. And if he doesn't, then we go hard rebuild. And hopefully by that time we were picking like number one overall. And what is it next year? It's Caleb Williams out of USC, and I can't even think who would be the top one the next year. I know Arch Manning will be coming out in the next 2 or 3 seasons, so maybe we can shoot for that. Wouldn't that
Yeah.
be great, having a Manning in green and gold?
Oh God.
No. No.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Yeah,
I can't make any joke about it. Just no.
The thing about Anthony Richardson as well that I think is important to remember is that he's not just a good athlete or even a great athlete. He's like literally one of the probably 2 or 3 most athletic quarterbacks ever, next to Cam Newton and Andrew Luck. He's like, that's the caliber of like a physical specimen that he is. And you know, I was reading this kind of really interesting theory. I think it was one of the guys from The Athletic, I think. And, because traditionally we think about the toolsy QB prospects are the guys that have the really high ceiling, but like the really low floor because they rely on their athletic traits. But a lot of kind of the historical evidence and like the guys who have been drafted, it's actually kind of the opposite, or not the full opposite, but as in guys who have the most tools actually have the highest floors, because the guys who don't have the arm, guys who don't have the ability to scramble, don't have the ability to hold up in the pocket, like those are the guys who only have their kind of brain power, and 99% of people don't have that. So I think that's the kind of thing that really draws me to Anthony Richardson, is because a lot of his problems, obviously he has work to do in the mental like aspect of understanding and processing the defense. And the Florida offense is not the traditional West Coast style that we run in Green Bay, but this what he has to work with is just so exciting. And yeah, it's kind of like the vision of what that could be obviously is like the draw, but the things that can be improved with him, a lot of it is like footwork. And I mean, like the past 3 quarterbacks that we've had in the building all have had terrible footwork coming in straight from the draft. So I think they're things that could be realistically be fixed. He's not like a fundamentally broken or like bad prospect who just happens to have really good physical traits. He's someone who just has grown up with some bad habits, and I think that can be definitely improved. That's the draw for me for Anthony Richardson. I like him more than I like Will Levis, to be honest, but I think they're both kind of good. The one that I've kind of seen recently as well, getting a little bit of buzz, is Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. He's kind of been like injured here and there. I think he missed like almost all of last season. But that's one that apparently the NFL is quite high on. I mean, have you guys watched much of Hendon Hooker?
I watched a little bit on him, but I think he'll be out for part of the season this year because I think he got hurt towards the end of the college year. So
yeah, 20
anything he does, yeah. So he'll be lucky if he makes it to like halfway or can be available halfway through the season. you know, the only question I have about him is look at the talent he had at receiver at Tennessee. Did he make those receivers or did those receivers make him? And, it's kind of easy to do that when you got a guy like Hyatt that can, burn the field and you just got to throw it up and he'll be there somewhere. And so, not saying he's not a good quarterback. He had a good throwing motion. He looked like he had a fairly strong arm. And of course, we'll see how he handles the injury coming off the injury, but he was mobile. And, I as much as, like I said, I grew up with the pocket pass, more of the pocket passers, and you love seeing a pocket passer that can just pick apart, defenses. The league has moved to more of a pass/slash scramble type quarterback with leaning more on the scramble than the pass. And he could be that guy. I didn't watch him heavy because, like I said, I could see him being the guy the Packers take just to sit him down and redshirt the year, and then have him be the primary backup the next year. So it would be interesting. But like I said, I wonder with all the targets he had down there if maybe that helped him out a little bit more than what he was. I think he had a pretty decent RAS score though, so he is athletic, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that he's a guy that like I out of anybody, it's weird to say, but like when he got that injury, when he tore his ACL, I was like really super bummed for him because like he was, I mean, that happened I think like a week or two before Thanksgiving, like literally a week or two before the end of the college football season. And it's like they weren't gonna Tennessee wasn't gonna go on and compete for anything past a bowl game, so he probably had 2 games left to play before he would have just sat out and prepared for the draft, most likely. And it's disappointing because like I think if he makes it through the season without tearing his ACL, I think he ends up being a guy that like everyone is I think it ends up being where it's like everyone starts talking about okay, it's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and then Hendon Hooker goes in the top. He replaces like Will Levis as that guy because he's the quarterback that I think kind of fits more of that image and profile of what everyone wants a quarterback to look like and play like nowadays. And so I think if he doesn't do that, like that, he's sitting there in the top half of the draft. You're right. Like he is such a question because if he can come back and recover from his ACL, he has he is just like impeccable form. He might not have like as much athleticism as a guy like Anthony Richardson or even Will Levis maybe, but he has the technique. He's a solid enough player that he can kind of figure everything else out as it comes. And so he's a guy that like I if I was a GM, I probably wouldn't touch just because I don't want to f around with ACL injuries like that. Like this isn't a Jameson Williams thing where you can sit him for half of the year and he just pops in and can do whatever. Like quarterback is a completely different situation than that. So I'm rooting for him, and hopefully he comes and he finds a place that is a situation where he can do everything right because I think he is a good enough player that, like I said, if he wasn't injured, he would be being talked about in the top round. And actually, that in a way that might end up being a little better for him because now he might go to a team that's drafting later on in the draft and goes and plays in a better situation. Like maybe he ends up going to like Baltimore or something and he gets to sit and really fully heal. And when he gets to come out and play, he's playing on a better team. He's not going to Carolina. He's not going to Houston where he's going to get, tossed around like a rag doll every week because the team sucks. So it might end up being a blessing in disguise for Anthony, Hendon. But I do love him. I like him a lot.
Well, here we go. Another coincidence. If the Packers take him in the second round, he's an injured quarterback, and that's what they did with Brian Brom. Brian Brom was an injured quarterback. I'm just saying.
Even the name is also like alliterated. I mean the connections are all there.
Alliteration. Hey, it's going to happen.
Guys,
Maybe
we're on like
maybe the
third or fourth
NFL
grade
is
level
scripted.
here.
It's in the script.
Maybe
It's in
the
the script. I have it here. I've been reading.
You know what's going to happen. We're going to be watching the draft, and it's going to fall just like that, where the Packers end up with like 3 second-round picks. One of them's going to end up being like what was it? It was one's going to be a wide receiver, one's going to be the quarterback, and the other's going to be the cornerback. And it's people who are old enough are just going to be sitting there mind boggled because it's happening all over again.
And I can guarantee that will happen, because that means I will have to fight half of my family on draft night. And so because that situation will happen, that means this is going to happen, because I know I will have to fight somebody in my family because we took a quarterback. I'd have to be like, it makes sense. Just trust me. Shut up and trust me.
Well, here's another coincidence. Brom came from Louisville, and you've got Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. They're state neighbors.
Okay, that one's a little bit more of a reach.
That's a stretch. They both live in
thought you were
America.
about to go like,
And the colors both come from the Red family. The Louisville has red, and
very
Tennessee
Red
is.
family. Yes. What a coincidence.
It's
going to happen, guys. We'll put it right here. It's going to happen.
Actually, confirmed. I think it's also really important to we kind of talked about this pre-show a little bit, but I think it's very important to kind of think about like the measurables for like a lot of these guys really limit who the Packers are going to be picking. The Packers have a type. I mean, it's like I don't think they're as strict as someone like a team like the Colts, who I think strictly, or even like the Broncos as well. They have really strict requirements for their quarterbacks. But I think Green Bay wants a guy that's like at least probably 210, probably 6'1", 6'2", ideally, and big arm. The big arm is the thing that every quarterback that's been drafted by the Packers and has had a meaningful place on this team has had a big arm, and that kind of limits a lot of these kind of prospects in the middle to later rounds. I found that like a lot of them, even after a few clips, I was like, yeah, this is not happening. They're not taking or they're not spending a draft pick on a guy who doesn't have at least an above average arm. I think this range of like middle to late round thing kind of doesn't really exist with the quarterbacks in this class. Are there any quarterbacks that you guys thought of in the later rounds that the Packers might be looking at?
This, I think Dan said this right off the top, and you kind of said the same thing, Nick, that this quarterback class is just absolute horseshit. I'll say it, horseshit. Because it just seems
Is that
like...
because you can't say precipitous?
Shut up, Dan. But if you look at them, a lot of them are shorter quarterbacks. They're more mobile quarterbacks, which, like I said earlier, that's just the wave of things that are happening right now. And they're not good. I mean, they have the arm, but they don't have the accuracy. You got guys like Jaron Hall from BYU. He's short. He's 6 foot. And you could see it when he was playing that he was having a lot of passes batted down, and that was in college. What's going to happen when he gets into the pros? Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA. Again, another small quarterback, but he's more of a scrambler. He can get out, and he has speed to him. And he had some running back moves, which is, kind of good for a guy who's going to scramble out of the pocket. But, his accuracy just wasn't there. And this is a question that I put on Twitter because I was having a hard time finding it. He threw the fastest football at the combine. I can't remember what they said the speed was. So, he's got the arm strength, but he doesn't have accuracy to go with it. And yeah, you can teach guys things to help them with accuracy, but you're never going to 100% fix it. Or you got guys like Max Dugan, and he's small too.
Yeah.
Tanner McKee from Stanford fits the normal quarterback mold, but he was in a system that was so crap that, you couldn't see if he was good or not. And the one thing that boggled my mind with the Stanford scheme, and I talked about this when we were talking about wide receivers, they run an RPO heavy offense, but it's like a delayed RPO. The quarterback and the running back will be sitting there dancing behind the line of scrimmage for like 3 seconds before he decides to either hand it off or throw it. And you can't have that kind of delay. I mean, think back to Packers training camps under McCarthy. They had a clock set up that you needed the ball out in 2 seconds. You don't have that time to be able to run an RPO like that. But I mean, McKee from Stanford's pretty good. He's got a decent sense of pressure. I thought he needed to read his progressions a little bit better, but he got the ball out quick, other than the RPOs. He's pretty accurate, but needs work on touch because he can overshoot some targets. But I think if I was going to take him, it would probably be mid rounds, because with this being a crap class, they're going to overdraft on some of these guys, and I think he's going to be one of them that gets overdrafted.
Yeah, Tanner McKee will be in, let's see, when was that? 2020. In 2026, we'll be taking a team to the Super Bowl, because that's what Jalen Hurts did this year. And in 2021, I was all on board with, guys, you don't understand. Every mock draft I keep doing, Jalen Hurts is right there in the third round, and we could take him, and there's your succession plan, and it's all going to work out beautiful, baby. I'm like, it's all just going to, everything's going to fit neatly into place. And that is the same way I feel about Tanner McKee. I'm like, guys, no. Fourth round, Tanner McKee comes right in there, and I'm like, and if Jordan Love doesn't work out, there's Tanner McKee. If Jordan Love does work out, you ship Tanner McKee off. Like he feels like you said, Joe, he kind of feels like the quarterback that was, like, if they were designing a quarterback to fit this offense, he kind of feels like that guy. A tall, built, but can still, move around and make a little action happen with his legs. He makes he can make every single throw if he needs to. You're right. The big thing is Stanford was awful. And so it's like, was he part of that, or is he actually good? And that's kind of like, I love that diamond in the rough kind of feel. And so, yeah, if he was sitting there at, even if he fell to like 3, and you crushed the first couple of picks, like you've hit out of the park, and he sits there, I would be really, I could be talked into doing that, because I just love what I kind of saw and was reading and everything about Tanner McKee. I'm like, fudge, like if Jordan wasn't here, like this is the guy I would like really love to take this offense over.
Yeah, and I mean, the guys around him at Stanford could be, but he did have some solid targets. He had a couple tight ends. I can't think of the tight ends' names because I don't think they're coming out for this year's draft. But he also had Elijah. He was my dude. What's his name? Higgins. Higgins as a wide receiver, and that guy I thought was great. And then he had a running back that kind of gave you vibes of Christian McCaffrey. So I mean, he had tools, but he didn't have a line. But again, I go back to the RPO thing also. When you're having a hesitant RPO, the defense is going to get to you. RPO is made to be a split second decision. You can't hesitate. You either got to throw it or you got to run it. Otherwise, the defense is going to eat you up. But yeah, I could be talked into Tanner McKee or McKee. I keep saying McKee.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, Nick.
No, yeah. I think Tanner is one of the guys. I think he's the only, almost like in the same vein as like Christian Watson last year. I think he's one of the only quarterbacks in this class that has the ability to really like put it all together. A lot of these guys are very incomplete prospects, kind of like I mentioned earlier. Have this or they have that, or maybe they're a little bit undersized, blah blah blah. And yeah, McKee is far from a perfect prospect. I think we can all quite clearly see that. And I think it's interesting to see. I always reference other websites to see kind of where my own opinion should be sitting at. And PFF has him as like a first round talent, which I wouldn't go that far, but some other places have him as like a fifth or sixth round kind of evaluation. But I think this really speaks to kind of like it's the eye of the beholder thing. I think the Packers will love him. He has everything there to work with, and theoretically, like you said, Dan, if he like figures it out 3 years from now, I think he'll be a really good quarterback. There's just so much there to work with. I mean, he has a fantastic arm, and he's shown the ability to do everything that you want him to. It's just a matter of translating that to the NFL, right? And like you said, Joe, he had some pretty good players on his team. Michael Wilson is the one that stands out to me. But
Yeah, that was another one. Yeah.
I think he's. I wouldn't take him that like too early, but in that theoretical range we were talking about earlier, that kind of maybe fourth round range, I think he'll be the perfect pick because I mean like it doesn't really get much better than that as far as quarterbacks in this class with what you're getting in the mid to late rounds. I mean, I would be happy with that.
Well, I'll go out on a limb and say, had he played for like Georgia or Alabama, I think he'd be number one overall. I think he'd be the definitive first round pick because he seemed like he had the ability to do stuff. He just didn't either, A, have the coaching and B, have basically an offensive line because the poor kid was getting killed back there. So, I mean, yeah, I'd go out on a limb and say he'd be number one overall had he went to like a Georgia or an Alabama or even I won't say the university in the state that has a peninsula connected to Wisconsin. And
That's fine. I grew up in Ohio. I live here only by marriage. I am a Michigander only by marriage.
but I just think had he went to a bigger school with a better supporting cast, he could have went number one overall. And the only other one that I've got, because again, this wasn't really a big class. It wasn't a big class. Trying to look for names of guys to look for, on one site that I normally look at just names for prospects, they had 2 pages of quarterbacks. That's it, 2 pages. And one wasn't even a complete page. So it was hard to get names. So, I mean, you got guys like Stetson Bennett, but he's like 56 years old. And
You mean Ben Kurt Jr.?
or
Senior.
I yeah, senior. I did watch a little bit of Adrian Martinez, but he's in the same boat. He's like 102 years old. He's been around forever, and he jumped from Nebraska to Kansas State. And there's things to like about him, but he's going to be a project, and he's going to be an old project.
It felt like for 8 years, every time I watched Nebraska football, Adrian Martinez was the quarterback. And I would be every year I'd be like, still? I'm like, is it still the same? I literally thought for a second, I'm like, he's got a brother, right? Like, they got another Martinez, right? Like, no, it's still him.
Yeah, he has. He's been around forever. But I mean, like I said, there's things to like about him. I don't really have any names right now. I could pull them up, but there's some small school guys. Like I know Tim Demarat from Fordham. I think he's from Fordham. He's got a possibility. They're going to have to work on his mechanics because it takes him forever to get the ball thrown out. But he's got some stuff to him. But as much as I said, I think the Packers need to take one. It's going to have to be early because people are going to overdraft. So that's why I said the second, third, fourth rounds are going to be where you're going to see the Packers take it. And most likely, depending on how many second rounders they have, it'll probably be in the second round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the only other guy that I could see them taking as like a really late round pickup, like I'm speaking like seventh rounder, the guy from BYU, Jaron Hall. There's a few concerns, like I mentioned, the age thing. I think he's turning 25 this kind of upcoming season, and the durability. I don't think he finished a full season in his time at BYU. But I mean, aside from that, though, I mean, he's one of the only guys that I think still has the arm talent. I really loved his ability to consistently throw like outside the numbers. You can really see the power and he's never struggling to make any of those throws. He's mobile. He has enough athleticism to kind of create he's like he's far from a perfect prospect, but as a late round pickup, apparently he's a really fantastic guy to be around as well. A really good locker room presence. I mean, as far as
He's
just
a
like a
Mormon.
back,
They say that about all Mormons coming from BYU.
well,
Look at Jamal Williams.
Well, Jamal was an
Oh,
outcast, remember?
right,
Because he broke the
exactly,
rules there.
Right.
Sorry, Nick.
yeah, I didn't know that actually. But yeah, he's one of the. I think he's probably the only guy that I would actually be kind of interested in the later rounds, purely just for the physical thing. And yeah, just as a backup, I would rather have that than just some random or just some 37-year-old Matt.
I can see Jaron Hall, but like I said earlier about him, he's on the short side. I think he's only 6 foot even.
Yeah, he was
And,
just over 6 foot in the combine. That's the hard thing.
yeah, and like I said, he was getting balls batted down in college. What's going to happen when he gets in the pros? Because he's got a low throwing motion. If he had the longer throwing motion, maybe he'd have a little bit more success, but he had a low throwing motion. And then one of the big knocks I had on him was he stares down his receivers a lot. It's fixable, but that was one thing. And there you go again, when you got not very many weapons on your team, you have to stare him down, because the only one that I can think that he had was Puka, and I love that guy, but yeah, he's viable, but it's kind of like the whole Bryce Love situation. Bryce Young.
I was like, wait, hold on.
Sorry, these names are all running together. You don't know how many guys I've watched of different position groups so far in like a week's time. Their names are running together. You're lucky I haven't called you guys some weird ass name yet. But Bryce is only what, 5'10", maybe.
Yeah, I think he weighed in. He came in at I think 5'10" and a half.
And 205 pounds. And when he went to his pro day, he didn't gain any weight. He said he's going to be comfortable playing at 205 pounds. Okay, that's great.
He's not playing at 205 as well. He's no way he's playing at 205. When he was at
Alabama,
he probably played at 175.
205 would be great for him with his height, but his height's going to hold him back. I mean, honestly.
Mina Kimes killed his career. Let's be honest. That's honestly, I know height is it's obviously real, but to have that be a thing that news medias were running with, were like, is he as tall? Is Mina Kimes as tall as Bryce Young? And she had to come out and say she was wearing heels that's why they. It's like at a certain point, I just have to sit back and laugh. I'm like, this is what all of us as grown adults are dissecting a picture between Bryce Young and Mina Kimes.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I love it.
Going to baseball, look at when they had the picture of Jose Altuve next to Mike Judge. It was like he was standing next to one of his kids. But if you think about it, I had this argument over wide receivers too. How many guys have succeeded in the league at that position being that tall? You're not going to get very many of them.
I think of one. What was his name? The guy he has heaps of instructional QB videos on YouTube now. I've totally forgotten his name, but yeah, the list is very short. There's not very many.
It is. I mean, Drew Brees was 6 foot, so you could theoretically throw him on there. Russell Wilson, I think, was 6 foot, 6'1", so you could probably throw him on there. The jury's still out on, and I just lost his name. Arizona. Yeah, Kyler Murray.
Kyler is good.
No, I think the jury's still out, because just look at him. We'll see what happens with it.
He would have won the MVP in 2021 if he stayed healthy. I think that's pretty safe.
Yeah, but what did he do last year?
Yeah, but that team's a dumpster fire. Arizona fucking sucks.
Everything
about that team was so bad.
I think the Kyler thing is a little bit more up here than it is the height. for him.
Most likely.
At least that's what I kind of get the vibe of. It's not physical, it's a little bit more mental.
Yeah, but think about it. He's been hand-fed his own
Sure.
bullshit for years. So,
Oh yeah.
but anyway, back to the point. You don't see many of these guys coming out 5'10" and having a ton of success in the NFL. I hope the best for him. I hope he breaks that chain. Just like, unfortunately, I have to say it, I hope CJ Stroud breaks the chain of the Ohio State quarterbacks, because you want to see one of them succeed at some point. But it just, you know, history's against them. Well, you put it Doug Flutie, but Doug Flutie really didn't have a ton of success. He just had a
Yeah, that
long
makes sense. Yeah.
career.
That's who I was thinking of. That's the only one I can think of who's that short. He was 5'10" as well. But yeah,
Yeah,
other than that, it's like
he just had a long career. He had some stints along the way, but not
They're
really.
the exception that proves the
of
rule.
course, no,
Like when
absolutely.
when guys like that kind of succeed, I think like kind of like what Joe was saying is like it's because it happens so infrequently. Guys like that succeeding kind of prove that like yeah, it's you do need like as much as I kind of like knock on like the intangible talk of like hand size and that kind of stuff. It's like yeah, like you do kind of have to be a certain, like it's
Yeah,
like you don't see a lot of 6 foot jockeys,
Right, yeah.
yeah,
Or 600-pound jockeys. You're not going
Right,
to get a sumo wrestler to go
right.
be a jockey, and you're not going to get a jockey to go be a sumo wrestler. So that stuff just happens. But I hope he does. But there you go again. He's got two knocks against him. Because how many successful Alabama quarterbacks have there been, and how many successful short quarterbacks have there been?
the school thing doesn't matter. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Tell that to Ohio State, who hasn't produced a.
No,
But like,
I
what
do
university
love.
does? There's literally not a single university in the country that produces quarterbacks on a
I
consistent
am
basis.
so thankful for Nick coming
That's
at
not a
this
thing.
from
It's not a thing that exists.
the international opinion because like we all grew up with like dying by college football on Saturdays and that leading into the hangover of Sunday, and he's just like, why the fuck do you people care about what college they
Like,
go
yeah,
to?
like
Like,
in my opinion, like the big schools, like for some positions, I think it really matters. Like DBs, especially, I'm definitely a big believer in like Alabama DBs, like being very well trained. But like quarterbacks, man, quarterback is like an individual thing. It's like where you go, especially
It's
now,
not all individual, though.
it
That's
really
where I'll
is.
disagree because you've got to also go by scheme. Because look at Ohio State's scheme. What does Ohio State run, Dan?
oh, I couldn't tell you.
Well,
I'm
no, I
not.
mean it's more of a
It's an
spread
RPO.
offense.
It's an RPO. Spread it around. Yeah, make one or two reads.
Yeah. Whereas, and I hate to say it because Iowa's quarterback situation, and you guys can hit me on that because when has the last time Iowa produced a quarterback worth of shit? I know it. But I mean, Iowa has a pro style offense where theoretically they're going to have more if our friggin' recruiting would find them. We could produce a little bit more because of the closeness to what they produce.
Not a
You're
thing.
shaking your head, but look at
But
Georgia. Look at
like,
USC, Oklahoma.
Well, here's something I think that should be taken into account though is like other skill positions like wide receiver and DB. You have multiple of them on the field at a time and multiple on your team. Quarterback is starting quarterback. There's 32 spots, and so like if you break in and you're a capable starting quarterback, like look at guys like Joe Flacco. Even if you crap out after winning a Super Bowl, you're going to get starting. He's a back. I mean, he's a perennial backup now, but like he's Matt Ryan. He's getting starting jobs in different places. Carson Wentz is getting starting jobs. It's kind of like I don't know, Nick. This might be more your international speed, but like Formula One, where it's like if a driver makes it into the top, he's probably going to stay around there for a while. He might just pop around different places. So it's harder to break in. So it's like, yeah, guys, like if you're not successful right away, they'll pull the plug on you way faster than a wide receiver or a linebacker or something, because like you can kind of put them on the back burner. They can play special teams. They can make their way other ways. So it is kind of like it's way harder to break in, and so you don't see as many guys from a wide range of universities because it's so much harder to break into, you know?
Yeah, I can agree with that. But I guess my thing with the college part of it, to continue the argument, so to say, we're seeing every year. It's well, maybe not every year, but it seems like it. We're getting an Alabama quarterback and an Ohio State quarterback, but we're not seeing them stick in the NFL because of whatever reasons. Dwayne Haskins had, rest his soul and all that stuff. He had his own demons that he couldn't succeed. Justin Fields, the only way he's succeeding is by running. He's not doing it with his arm. I'm trying to think, what's the other latest Ohio State quarterback that got drafted?
I mean, Fields, Haskins. Before that, it was J.T. Barrett and Cardale Jones.
Yeah, and they were not much. I mean, they weren't even
Terrell
really first
Pryor.
round guys.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I can and I just lost his name too. I go all the way back to Troy Smith.
Troy Smith, yeah.
Yeah, he was supposed to be a top-notch quarterback and flamed out. So, I mean, in a way, you kind of have to look at the school to see if they're pumping them out every year, but they're not having success from that position every year. Is it the team they're going to? Is it the player themselves? Is it the system that's developing them?
Sure. No, that's
So,
that's totally fair.
So, like I said, well, there you go. If I just said with the Stanford kid, McKee, if he would be in Georgia or Alabama, he'd be a surefire first rounder. So that just shows that some of these systems would be better for some of these quarterbacks. Right. I mean,
yeah, for me, I feel like the team that you go to matters a million times more than the team that you've come from. I think prime example number one, Justin Herbert. I thought he was going to be shit coming out of college because he ran like more RPOs than anyone has ever ran in the history of college. And he comes to the Chargers and, tears it up in the league. It's for me, it's just, it really comes up on, it's the whole intangible thing for me for quarterbacks. It's about like who you are as a person and if you have the mental ability to learn any system, because nobody in college really runs, people say like pro style offense or pro ready offense. Like that's not like the best teams in college aren't really necessarily getting you ready to be the best NFL player you can be. They're getting you ready to win college games. They're not focused on, I really hope he does well in the Texans next year so I can turn them around. They don't care about that. It's about winning now.
Well, I will point out that they do care about it a little bit because that helps in their recruiting. If they can say, look how many guys we've pumped out into the NFL, look at Alabama. They pump out stars every year, and I think that's the only reason people want to go, well, other than they probably pay a lot of money to these 5-star recruits. That's the only way they're getting anybody to go down to Alabama.
That's fair.
So,
that's fair. Yeah, I think even like the only team that I can really think of that was like really close. I don't know college football as well as you guys, so I might be talking totally out my ass. But the main team that I can think of that was really successful and ran like a true pro style offense was like 2019 LSU, and that was because they had like one of, if not the best college rosters of all time. And even then, it's not really like a real NFL offense.
I hate to say it again, but Michigan runs a more pro style offense, and they were pretty damn close, successful this year.
Yeah.
Georgia is more of a pro style offense. LSU, is more pro style. So I mean, there are ones out there that are running pro style offenses that are producing guys, but it's all subjective. Every year the draft is as a crapshoot, and you can only go by what the numbers show you, and that's why I love the draft, is because it's like Christmas. You unwrap the package, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it, and you got to decide how you feel, what emotion you're going to show when you get it. So, maybe later on down the line, you like it a little bit better, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about the draft. That's why it's so fun, right? Is because literally no one knows what's going to happen. Even if you're the best GM in the league or whatever that means, you're always going to miss. And it's just so interesting to see like what goes into making the right decision. I mean, I love Good, to be honest. I'm a really big fan of the way that he runs things, but he's
You
missed on his
mean
fair
the
share of prospects.
big idiot, according to how does Jacob say it? The frat boy punter.
Well, I was told that Good is a bottom three GM in the NFL.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Shut
And
up.
I don't know.
certainly,
Is there anybody else you guys want to talk about?
I'm all done, I think.
Did
yeah.
did we hit on everything? Okay, so we'll go to my final question. I don't know if Nick has any more for you. I've been asking this of everybody that we've had on. You can give an explanation. You cannot give an explanation. You can just give me a name. Come draft time, the end of the draft, who is it that you're hoping is wearing the green and gold out of this position group?
Oh man, that's tough for me because I have in the past I've gotten to do way more like mock drafting and stuff like that, and with just with kid stuff recently and everything else, like I've found
Oh,
myself
sure.
like
Blame the poor
I
kid.
yeah, he doesn't know what's going on. He's not gonna listen to this. No, but like I haven't been able to like dive into it as much. But like for me, here's okay. I'll go cheapy with it a little bit. Jackson Smith and Jigba
No, no, no.
as
I'm
number
talking out of
two.
this
Yeah.
position group, out
Oh,
of
this position.
quarterbacks.
Oh
Yeah, yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
shit. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm like,
I do
whoa.
agree,
Like
though.
you
I
told
do
me
agree,
about the
though.
quarterback. I was not ready for the full thing. Man, I think if it's in terms of being happy about the position, like in the future, Tanner McKee would be my guy, my choice. Like if that happened, I was like, okay, like this is a front office that is like preparing for the real possibility that Jordan Love might not be the guy, and they think that this is the prospect. Again, my cocaine bear idea of like the dream that I would love is to get Richardson. Like if that happened, I would be like, let's start running two quarterback offenses. Who's going to get the ball? You don't know what's going on. Like who's the team out in the XFL right now that's like literally playing with two quarterbacks? I think it's DC. Is it DC? I'm like, let's start doing that. Like that would be my thing. So but realistically, if Tanner McKee was the guy and he ends up being a Packer, I'm like, man, that's a really solid, smart pick for the future. So I think I'll have to go with him,
We
which
know
really
if the
speaks to
Packers
what this
somehow
draft
end
is.
up with Anthony Richardson, Dan's going to be streaking down his neighborhood. We're going to see the news headline: local man
Local
caught
man.
streaking.
I
Nick, what about you? Out of this
I'm right
position
across the street
group,
from a park. I can't be doing that.
Nick, out of this position group, who would you hope is in a green and gold by the end of the draft?
I mean, it's hard because most of them suck. Yeah,
Well,
look.
even go UDFA. If you think it's not going to be in the draft, it could be
Oh,
UDFA.
no, I mean, look, yeah. As far as look, you can never have too many like good quarterbacks. I think we kind of seen that heaps in the past, 6 years in the league. Yeah, I'm on board with you, Dan. Because worst case, if we do develop Tan into a good quarterback, you can always trade him. A quarterback is a valuable commodity, even if they might be shit. I mean, Sam Darnold might end up starting for the 49ers this year. Like, how is that a real possibility that we've gone through? I mean, it's just it's one of those positions where people are always going to be desperate. People always want a quarterback. It never hurts to have more competition. I think that's kind of a lot of the reason why Aaron got comfortable. I mean, he even admitted that the reason that he was so driven to win those two MVPs is because he was pissed off that they drafted Jordan Love. Like, I mean, there's no reason why you should hold back if you don't have anyone at backup. So Tanner McKee is kind of my guy here.
I would tend to agree, but just to be a little bit different, I would go with my guy Clayton Tune out of Houston because I really liked what I saw out of him, and he does have the athletic ability. that he
Mhm.
could be somebody that could, they could groom into either to be a starter if they need it, or ship out for draft picks later on. So yeah, that'd be probably my guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dan, is there anything that you want to kind of plug before we finish up here?
I guess, yeah, just all the stuff that we're doing over at GameOn Wisconsin and Lombardi's Bar. We'll be kicking that off here relatively soon as we get like closer to the draft and get into the preseason and everything. And then I've also just started writing over at Wisconsin Sports Heroics as well. And I know it's in your outro here, but like if you just follow me on Twitter at DK all the way, like I plug all of my stuff over there. So if you want to follow any of what I do there, that is the best place to find me.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, as always, guys, you can find us, myself at NicholasGRGR on Twitter. You can find Joe at Iowa_Joe86, the podcast at Outback_Packers. Until next time, we'll see you later.